What's the creepiest or most unexplainable thing you've seen in broad daylight? When I was 4 and my brother was 10, he stayed home from school and my mom left him to babysit me. She left numbers on the fridge and stuff and off to work. I don't know how much longer after she left it happened, but we heard our dog barking viciously, which was completely out of character for her. At this point my brother and I are in the kitchen waiting for our biscuits in the oven, and the sound of Fluffy barking gets incredibly louder, which meant she was in the front lawn around the side of the kitchen entrance. The gate that led to the back was a little further down the side of the house, and whoever was outside was in the gap in between, out of Fluffy's reach. My brother opens the kitchen curtains to see if he could get a view as to what's going on. Right as he opened the curtains, there was a man looking right down at us, almost like he expected my brother to open the curtains. The doorknob began to rattle and my brother ran to the living room and grabbed the phone, taking me with him. As soon as he got on the phone, the rattle stopped. My mom came home, and at the same time the police showed up for a statement. They never found the guy. My brother remembers it as vividly as I do, and it's the creepiest thing I've ever lived through. It's such a strange memory. Back in primary school, I remember clearly that one day, while waiting to go into the actual school building, quite an amount of students gathered around a poster taped to the library on the opposite side of our school. I went there to see what they were looking at. The whole situation was so strange. Many were disgusted and frightened. I still remember that poster, vaguely. It was different pictures of cut-apart cats, like there was a picture of a cat's head next to its body, feet cut off, etc. There were like 6 or so different pictures on there. In the middle was apparently a warning: keep your cats inside. I don't know what exactly was written there, because I couldn't read too good back then, and all I remember was the pictures. Our teachers noticed, because a few kids cried. They had that poster taken down immediately. I seriously would like to know what sick fuck put this thing next to a primary school. I remember our parents telling us to not play in the woods. There was one, or maybe more, who knows, person actively mutilating cats. We knew this, we didn't need the pictures. I guess the police caught whoever it was, because 2 weeks or so later nobody talked about it anymore. Serial killer behavior. Yeah. Thinking back, it's so surreal. I was 6 or 7 at the time, so I didn't really think about this. We were just shocked and confused. Also a bit satanic panic going on at the time, especially since many cats were found in the woods around the only cave there. Many years later I actually went in, but it was nothing spectacular. Just a single room, and loads of stones had fallen down. It was used in World War II to hide weaponry. Before that it was a brewery cellar. I couldn't find too much about it on the internet. Only that there were probably people shot in there, or nearby. Rumors were, because so many people died there, it was some kind of worship ground for Satanists. But who knows really? We always found the place a bit creepy. Even today I don't really like. But we played there daily as kids. Well, until the cat thing, we stopped for a bit. When I was 15, my family went on a cross-country trip, and one night we camped in the Grand Canyon. We went to a ranger lecture around 6 p.m. This is summer, so it was still pretty light when we were walking back. We went off the trail as a shortcut, and after walking a ways noticed a light up ahead. As we drew closer, there was a man sitting at a desk in the woods with a lantern. Just a full wood office-sized desk in the middle of the woods. I distinctly remember he had long sideburns and feeling like he was dressed like a man from the 1800s. My dad backed us down towards the trail and we went on our way. The man never made a peep or looked up or acknowledged us. There were 2 adults and 3 teenagers, and we all remember the event really clearly. I don't believe in ghosts or spirits, but have no explanation for what I saw. As I got older I figured I was misremembering, but everyone else in my family says they saw the same thing. 2008 mountain bike race in the Midwest. It was 100 degrees that day. Almost no oxygen on the woods. It was a hot day. 3 of us were well ahead of the pack. We were about to lap another racer when he just rode off the trail and down a steep ravine. All 3 of us stopped. The ravine was steep and very deep. We found his bike halfway down. We never found the racer. They sent search party and found nothing. To this day he's never been found. Do you think he took his own life? No. I think the heat messed up his head. I was so hot, I think he was disoriented. I got really dizzy in that race due to the heat. We made it to the bottom of the ravine. I don't think he would have died. But was anyone missing? Like, do we know who it was? We just couldn't find the body, or? Yes, it made the news. His body should have been easily found. He should have easily survived that fall. Dude just vaporized. I am fascinated by this story since bikers disappearing is so rare. I tried to Google but couldn't find anything. I wonder if you could say where in the Midwest? With all the interest in my post, I Googled it as well so I could have an update. I found nothing. The event occurred at a mountain bike race in Michigan. I Facebook messaged my friend who lives over in that area, and we raced together for a few years. He hasn't responded, but his last Facebook post was 4 years ago, so it appears he's off social media. The rider would not have died going down this ravine unless he went head first into a tree. He would have been banged up real good, but survived. The three of us stopped and were headed down the ravine within a minute of seeing him go off. We should have at least heard him rolling around or walking. There was nothing. We even started looking up in trees. Maybe he was up there. Nothing. We set his bike up at the top of the ravine and notified the first safety people we found. At the finish line, they made an announcement for volunteers to go search for the rider. The next day somebody posted an article to the forum about the missing rider. But then the story just faded away. I was in my doctorate studies at the time, so my brain has PTSD from those years. A car off of the road, on its roof on the other side of a farm fence. When I got down to it, all the windows were smashed and blood was everywhere. 5 minutes later, this guy dressed in a suit and tie comes walking out of the trees that the car is in front of, claiming it was his car. Not a scratch on him or anything. Edit, as apparently I have made too many comments, I have figured out how to put them all together. I apologize for my noobishness. Answer to questions. So, the police arrived and spoke to the gentleman. As it turned out, the vehicle had actually belonged to his son, who had been driving at excessive speeds, hit the gravel shoulder and went for a tour. The blood was from the son being bombarded with all the broken glass. Apparently they had crawled from the car and called their father. They were taken home, not to the hospital, and dad came back to try and deal with the car. Son was fined for leaving the scene of an accident and other minor things. Father fought the charges but lost. The fact that he strolled out of the trees towards this mangled sunfire was the creepy part. Well, that and coming up to an upside-down car with blood everywhere. I was around 10 or 12 years old when I was walking home with my family. My two brothers ran ahead while my parents and little sister were bringing up the rear. I was in the middle when I got this urge to look up ahead. I had been fiddling with my iPod, and honestly I don't know what I saw. It was a very tall, probably 7 to 9 feet best guess, lanky figure shrouded in all black. It walked slightly hunched and almost like it had a slight limp, but it moved fast. It crossed the street from our neighbor's house and passed in front of our car where it just disappeared. I should have been able to see it based on its height, but it literally just vanished. I ran and searched all around and in our car but found nothing. To this day I can't explain it, but I was in my right mind and know what I saw. Just wish I had some answers. False positive, I suspect. Our brains have evolved to see things that aren't there because the alternative is not seeing things that are there. Something triggered the defense part of your brain, so it compelled you to hunt around to ensure that you weren't in real danger. Some of your almost ancestors ignore that response and then met their end by assuming that the lump of rock just there was not, in fact, a lurking predator. This is also why people don't like looking in mirrors at night. Just in case. I saw a zombie. Naked man, ashy dirty skin, eyes rolled up in his head, stiff limbs sort of lurching through traffic in Jamaica. I was working in Kingston, Jamaica at the time in the late 80s. I asked my Jamaican crew and they said yes, it was a zombie, but it is a drug, not magic. They said people do this to people for revenge. A few weeks later I saw another one. An old woman this time. Holy fuck Lamau, my family is from Kingston, and when I visited in 2018, we literally saw someone in traffic exactly how you described. My sister said something to the effect of, he looks like he should be in The Walking Dead, and my dad just laughed because that was apparently not that abnormal. This thread just reminded me of something I went through. I was 12 or 13 and I went to the river with my friend, her younger sister, and her older sister that might have been somewhere from her early to mid-20s. It's a long stretch of river and we tried to find any place to park. We finally parked and walked through a small patch of woods, and at the end of the woods where the river was a tin trash can filled with garbage bags. The garbage bags were covered in blood, and a shoelace was coming out of one of the bags. We all stopped and observed the trash can, then continued onto the river. On the other side, there was backpack, an icebox, and an active fire, but no one was there. As strange as it all was, we just continued down the river to find a place to hang out. At some point the little sister told us we were being followed, so we got the hell out of there and called the cops. I really don't know what came of it all, but I do know, or so my friend told me via the news, that they found 2 bodies on that river. While this can be explained, the image still creeps me out to this day. It was around the time of planking craze. I had no idea what it was and hadn't heard anything about it. Got a taxi into town and was walking around the city center and life was normal. I then take a turn into the town square and there was around 200 people planking everywhere on everything. I don't know what was going on. I thought there may have been gunshots or a bomb. Or maybe the world was ending. I then asked someone next to me and they explained it and we laughed it off, but for that brief moment of time I'll never forget that uneasy feeling. The fact that the planking era and flash mob era overlapped is vastly underappreciated. I found my neighbor, one we didn't really know or talk about, laying in the middle of the street and looked dead. He had a leaf blower. I was too young to understand what a heart attack was. I ran in and told my dad what we saw and he totally dismissed us and wouldn't even come outside and down the block to check. Then prevented us from leaving the house again because it's none of our business. I am happy to say that my dad is sober now, but maybe that had an effect on his willingness to hear us or help us in a panic situation. I never found out what happened to the neighbor. I hope he made a full recovery. Around 2000, I was about 11, living in a suburban neighborhood in Virginia, USA. I looked out our living room window and saw a severed pig head sitting in the middle of our driveway. I yelled for my dad. He went outside to get a better look and then called the police. A cop came and took a look, spoke with Dad for a bit, then he just left. Dad put on gloves and put the head in a trash bag and into the trash can on the side of the house, and that was that. Nothing ever came of it. We have no idea where it came from, and it was just an incredibly weird experience. I was at a service station in New Orleans several years ago. I stopped in with my friend for lunch, and as I sat eating I got this weird feeling that something was off. It was strange. It just felt like there was something filthy in the room. I looked over a few tables and there was this man in a baseball cap staring at me. I guess I hadn't noticed him at first because he had been looking down with the hat obscuring his face, but now I could see his menacing grin and these puffy, red-rimmed eyes. He had some kind of terrible skin condition and he was utterly filthy in this yellowed wife beater. The skin on his hands was deeply cracked and just full of grit and filth. I could only bear to look for a moment before I started to feel sick and creeped out and lost my appetite. The gross feeling I had stuck with me and I actually did fall ill from it, and all I could think of was how off it all felt. I asked my friend if he'd noticed the guy but said he didn't. I'm not superstitious in the least, and my only explanation for the gross feeling is that the guy was so dirty/diseased that I just subconsciously noticed it before seeing him. I know he was likely homeless and mentally ill or a drug addict, but I'll never forget that look he gave me. I was working at a hospital. Standing outside on my break outside the loading dock, and this fella come wandering down the lane towards me. Keep in mind the emergency entrance is around the other side of the building. So he gets close and I can see he has his neck cranked over to the side and is kind of bent over to the side. Once he got to me I could see he had a big bone poking out the side of his neck, under the skin. He asked me for a cigarette lighter. I didn't have one, but I asked, "What the hell happened, man?" He told me he dived into the lake the night before when it was dark and smashed the top of his head on a rock sitting a foot below the surface. Safe to say I was blown away. This guy was concerned about his cigarette. Ended up just telling him to get the hell to the emergency room, haha. A friend and I were playing catch when I was a kid in Chicago. A screaming woman fell out of a third-floor window into some bushes one house over. We ran inside and told our parents, and they said we were imagining things and told us it was time to come up anyways. The police and fire department came about an hour later. I found out much later her drunken husband pushed her out the window. She broke her neck and probably died right before the ambulance arrived. Even though it was 20 years later, I almost had a bit of a breakdown. If we had been more forceful, maybe she would have lived. One time a friend sent me a picture of someone they saw in a crosswalk who looked exactly like me. But it was from behind from an angle so I couldn't see their face. But it was my current hairstyle and exact color. Arms and hands were the same, proportions, height, weight, etc. She was wearing an outfit I own and carrying a variation of a purse I have. My friend only knew it wasn't me because we had just spoken on the phone and I was at home. It really kind of haunts me wondering if her face really was exactly like mine. Friend says yes it was, and I'm super creeped out that I might have a doppelganger in my city. There is a website where you can post your picture and it scans internet for your face. It found a photo with a girl who looks just like me. I literally had to wonder whether it was possible that it was indeed me, but no, it was clearly at a party that I have never visited. I still think about it. For anyone asking for a link, OP may have been referring to twinstrangers.net. Thank you so much for providing the link. I honestly don't remember what it was and tried to Google but wasn't sure if the website was the same, and didn't want to post anything unchecked. Not really creepy that I was walking down the street on my way to the store when a large dog jumped through a glass window from a second story of a house and landed on the front lawn. I tried knocking on the door and got no answer from them or any of their neighbors, so I called animal control and stayed with the dog, who other than a few scratches was okay. Once they arrived, they called the police to investigate because even the animal control lady had no clue what would cause a dog to do that. I was at a Walmart to pick up some specific brand of honey wheat pretzels sometime in the summer of 2016 at around noon or so. I noticed a ridiculously tall white dude, over 6'6", holding a baby carrier with a blanket over the baby at the end of the aisle talking on the phone. He knelt down to look for something from the bottom shelf and put down the baby carrier on his left. A darker-skinned woman, not African, just had a darker complexion, with bright blue lipstick, walks past me and stops next to him. She looks down and grabs the baby carrier while the dad is mentally juggling the phone call, the baby, and whatever he was looking for. I think to myself, wow, that's kinda weird. I wonder if she's his wife or something. Guy gets whatever he was looking for and reaches to pick up his baby only to realize the baby isn't there anymore. He freezes for a second and calmly says, "Honey, I'll call you back in a second. I need to locate our child." I look at him and he looks me straight in the eyes and asks if I've seen a woman with black hair and blue lipstick nearby. I'm kind of weirded out and mention that she was right behind him less than 10 seconds ago. He thanks me and bolts to the front doors. I think to myself, according to my calculations, it no longer appears that she was his wife. This woman had tried to leave through the front doors but was stopped when the man yelled out that she was kidnapping his child. She was a serial stalker, apparently from a previous failed relationship. The fact that she was so brazen to go as far as stealing an infant child in public was insane. It was creepy how calm she looked while he was yelling at her for her actions. When I was about 8, my parents, my brother and me were hiking somewhere in Austria when we came across the ruins of a medieval castle on a hilltop. A sign said that there was a cafe near the ruins, so we went up. The cafe was deserted, all the tables and chairs were toppled, and next to the building stood a brand new big Mercedes with a lot of bullet holes in the trunk and the rear window. The car was heavily armored, the rear window was so thick that the bullets hadn't even penetrated it. We turned around on the spot and got out of there as fast as we could. Back in the hotel, my dad reported to the police but they dismissed it. Never knew what came of it. Edit. Since so many commenters suggested it was a movie set, that could very well be an explanation, but still it was scary and we didn't want to stick around to maybe find out the hard way that it was not a movie set after all. Also, why wasn't anything cordoned off, and why wasn't anybody around? Concerning the police dismissing it, when my dad called them, they said they were going to investigate. The next day he called again to ask what came from it, but they said it was nothing. The holes in the car had been caused by children throwing rocks. Unless those children were able to throw very small rocks at very high speed, that was obviously bullshit, but we got the message that they didn't want to tell us and we weren't supposed to keep asking. Edit 2. A lot of people asked when, 1984, and where exactly this was, so I asked my dad and he told me it wasn't in Carinthia, Kärnten, where we spent the vacation the year after, but in Lower Austria, in the valley of the river Krems. The only castle there is Castle Hartenstein, and when I see the photos online I remember that it looks exactly like that place. It's not accessible to the public now, but it may have been 38 years ago. When I was a child I had a vivid dream once where I was walking up a hill, and I saw a brown brick building with a black roof. There were trees around, and a brick path. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I dreamed of that place every now and then starting when I was 5 years old. At the time we lived in Florida. We eventually moved to Ohio and I grew up, and I was going on tours of colleges. I had picked one, but we had one more tour already planned, so we drove a couple hours and visited that one. The whole drive down I kept thinking it was a beautiful place, and I just had very positive vibes. The town itself was cute. Then we pull into campus and there it is, the hill and the building and the path and everything, just like my dream. I was astonished. I couldn't believe it. I did the tour and the whole time I just felt like I was home. Obviously I chose that college. Then the next spring I met my husband for the first time while I was walking up that hill. I don't know where that dream came from, I don't know what it was all about, but I think it changed my life. I really believe you had the dream and the feeling because you needed to meet your husband. My husband and I have a similar story. In spring of 2005 I was getting ready for my summer job, the same job I did every summer for the previous 3 years, Boy Scout camp. Every summer I drove an hour or two away up a canyon and worked/lived all summer at a Boy Scout camp. It was my favorite job. For some reason, as I was preparing to leave my year-round job, Boy Scout shop, for the summer, I got this dreaded feeling. I ignored it over and over, until finally I was physically ill any time I thought of it. At this same time, my husband was offered a promotion in his job. The only way to get the promotion was to move to another state. He went as far as visiting the area and looking for places to live. He found a great place and was preparing for the move. The same thing happened to him. He felt dread and unwell during preparation and thought of moving. He ignored it at first, thinking it was just the fear of leaving his family and what was familiar. Needless to say, we both ended up staying around that summer. We ended up meeting up for the first time since high school. We hung out once in high school with a group of friends. He thought I was snobby and I thought he was immature. 3 weeks after meeting up during that summer, and we were engaged. 4 months later, we got married. 16 years of marriage and 4 kids later, we are still going strong. That's a wonderful story. I think sometimes it really is meant to be. The first time I met my husband, I knew we would end up getting married. Years later, he told me he thought at first I'd just be like a one-night stand. Lol. Joke's on him, it's been 15 years and he can't get rid of me.